All right.
Let me cut this off. Abani Ghani, everyone. This is Professor Rahh. Going to have a very healthy discussion on Black issues that affect the quality of life of Black people in the world. This is a Conscious Corner with the co-host, Joe Hembrick. My name is Professor Rahh, Professor Emeritus, California State University of Long Beach, former Compton Unified School District School Board member, former Compton College School Board member, former Compton City Councilman, as well as a professor of Black Studies at Cal State University of Long Beach, and the first head of Black Studies at Cal State Long Beach, and taught there for 34 years before I retired. Former professor of ethnic studies, psychology, and history at Compton Community College. So we're gonna get started right away with this brief video presentation about the DNA of Black people that was featured on YouTube. Go ahead. Can't hear it. We can't hear it. He was reported missing in August, but well, we can identified until September 23rd after he was found on September 4th. An initial autopsy found that there was maybe we just won't play. But his mother said that a private autopsy tells a totally different story. I learned that my son didn't have eyebrows. What do you think? Why won't? I learned that the body that discovered did not just tell you. I discovered that the way that
Unmute, Rob. I could hear it on my end, but I don't know if you guys could hear it. And I'm sharing the screen, so it's probably being played. But we could probably do that another time. All right, I was able to hear it. We're going to talk about a number of things. We're going to talk about Jelani Day, as well as Clifford or Owenby, the paraplegic Black man that they drug out his car just here in Illinois, just not too long ago. After he told them he was a paraplegic, told the police he was a paraplegic. Just the savagery. Okay, we're having some technical issues here with Professor Rahh. Intervene. And didn't intervene. The girls were crying. They didn't let them call them. Excuse me. Can you start over? We had some technical issues on my end. Can you repeat that, please? Okay. Everything? Yes. Okay, first we're going to talk about Clifford Olenby. He was paraplegic. The police pulled him over because they said they thought he was leaving a drug house. He had tinted windows. He had his daughter in the back seat. I think she was around about 8 or 9 or something.
and she wasn't restrained, but they didn't know that until they pulled him over. They asked him to get out the car. He said, "I'm a paraplegic." Clifford Owensby, and he said he can't get out the car. So they grabbed him by his hair and jacked him out the car, handcuffed him on the floor. They searched the car. They didn't find no drugs, no weapons, and they handcuffed him. And they found $22,000 cash, which he said was his savings. And they cited him for his daughter not being in a seatbelt. They cited him for resisting arrest, obstructing something, and for tinted windows. And so he's suing with the NAACP as well as the going to take them to court. They saying, well, you know, you're supposed to have a handicap sticker in your window or either a handicap license plate. They never mentioned if he had either one, but they just savaged. The second savagery was Jacobs. You remember this case? This is a young man that the police were responding to some domestic violence. He went to get in his car. They said he was reaching for something and they shot him 7 times in the back and paralyzed. His father was part of, was very active in Minnesota, came down, and that case. After that case, there was a lot of disturbance throughout Minnesota. The issue that we're discussing is very crucial because of these 4 girls that they arrested in Tennessee, and there was an article about how this city, this little town, has criminalized kids. These were elementary school kids, and the police during their morning orientation were asked for a warrant to go arrest these kids because they saw them on a video watching a fight and they didn't intervene. But this city, this little town, has the highest rate of children arrests in the nation. Where, remember in Texas also, they had to send a judge to jail for putting Black people in jail just to these private prisons. And he was getting a kickback for the young people he put in prison for private prison. My whole point is that sometimes we look at the high profile cases and we forget the book that Dr. Joanda Kunjufu wrote in the early 90s, Black Children Endangered Species, or Black Boys Endangered Species. Sometimes, it's hard to get our people, some of our people, to really pay attention to what's going on with regards to those things. Those are some critical issues. And the whole purpose is to bring this to light, not to incite or argue or criticize Black people if they take a position or not, but just to educate people to what's going on continuously, not just what they're doing to the Haitians, not what they're doing to Africa. They took 100 and some thousand Afghanistans and took them to different countries to be processed before they bring them to the United States, give them either $50,000 a piece to resell them, but yet they wouldn't even let the Haitians come in and they just started deporting them under this Title 42 that says, for health reasons and because of a pandemic, people coming from a country that has a high COVID rate, that they could just send them back. Well, Afghanistan has a high COVID rate. And then this country has 5 islands that they could have sent them to. If Texas was too crowded, if Del Rio, Texas was too crowded, and processed them for their temporary status, protective status, TPS, temporary protective status, for the purposes of being processed. This is just about racism. Now, the Biden administration, this Title 42 is something that the Trump administration brought in. But before that, under the Obama administration, Biden was over in the Haitians, and they were still sending them back even before the pandemic. They used to call Obama administration deportation in chief because of their high rate of deportation.
Professor Rahh,
Yeah.
you have some background noises going on.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna have to get up to go cut it off.
Oh, okay.
All right.
All right, Brother Doctor, any comments so far about what Professor Rahh is saying?
No, not yet.
Okay, Sister Aziza?
Good evening. No, not at the moment.
Okay, he's back. All right.
Mashinda, you have any comments? Brother Mashinda? Are you there? You're on mute.
He could have.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Just interesting set of events that you're talking about. I was aware of the incident that happened in Dayton just by news and reading about it. You know, I have friends in Ohio, and I hadn't talked to them about it yet. They're pretty active in different things, but yeah, it's just more of the same. The value that they put on people's lives, and elevate their their mission, to what, I mean, it's just more of the same, that type of thing. But I thought it was, of course it was wrong, but it was beyond ridiculous. I read that they were saying that he was, I'm speaking of the man in Dayton, he was driving, the paraplegic was driving, they said, I guess he was driving away, they said allegedly from a drug location or something to that effect, and said he had a background, of being involved in drugs and and guns and things like that. But I don't care what he's been involved in, you don't treat a person like that, so it's just more of the same. I just wanted to comment on that, but thank you. But go ahead and continue on, sir. Thank you.
See, the critical issue is that sometimes we get comfortable in our own oppression. And it's like the old shock theory. You shock people to the point where they don't feel it no more. And sometimes we don't see the Haitians as our ethnic brothers and sisters from a Pan-African point of view. We don't see other people that's being victimized through racism, even George Floyd. That was media driven for the most part because of the video. I have to develop a sensitivity and an outrage to a certain degree about the injustices that we face as an African people. Some people think racism is just a prejudice, white folks not liking you. No, it's the destruction of our lives, the the unequal treatment in the criminal justice system, the other forms of victimizations and viciousness that sometimes we have to bring out. Now we have successes. I mean, Bubba Washington, is that his name? Wallace. Bubba Wallace just won the NASCAR. But you remember they had a noose in his garage. And Charlie Scott, and his family had to sue to get the award, to get the trophy. They wouldn't even announce that he won it until they forced them to, and they wouldn't recognize him as the winner. But Bubba Wallace, because Michael Jordan co-sponsored him, he won in a shortened race because of rain, but he won a NASCAR. The same Bubba Wallace that, as I mentioned before, they had a noose in his garage, and it made national news. And then they tried to play it off. But the point is, NASCARs are very racist. And we were talking about the DNA. About 1980, Tom Brokaw, a white reporter, did the myth of the black super athlete, and he went over in Africa and he studied black babies in Africa, African babies. And he said, you know, that they matured faster than white babies. This is what the scientists say. They were looking around and they had more strength in their neck and holding their heads up at an earlier age. And then he talked about their muscles. That's why they're good in track and base, football and basketball, because of their body structures and their biological makeup, and that includes your DNA, your cell. Now this new video that was just put on YouTube, as we was trying to play, it's about the fact that the reason everything that we get involved in, we excel. That from that the system, you know, they took the Negro Baseball League and black people got into that, and they have excelled in it, you know, since Jackie Robinson. You have, the major records that's been held. The same thing, basketball was discriminatory until the Globetrotters, and they used to have a basketball league. And then they got them in the NBA, but for years, they wouldn't even let them play until the 1950 something. And then the same thing with football. It was in the 50s before the first black football professional player. But look at all the how black people are excelling. The exploitation come in when black people can play for the University of Alabama. Quarterback is black. The greatest receivers are black. You know, they were the #1 team until another black team beat them this past weekend with predominantly black people on the line. They used to didn't let black people be centers, quarterbacks, or middle linebackers, because they called plays, and they reserved those positions for the whites. Many of the most positions where you got hurt a lot, wide receiver, defensive backs, punt returners, that's where black people were, you know, they got injured a lot. And they just had a thing about how they had black professional football players. They believed that they didn't have the cognitive equivalency of whites. So when they claimed that they had some type of brain or injuries or injuries dealing with their brain, they said, well, we can't tell how serious that is because, you know, you weren't that smart anyway, you know. So these are things that we have to look at and put on the table to try to, you know, get out the way, because our children have to come up in this society as well as our neighbors' children, and they be victimized. And if we don't fight for them, who is? It's the same thing with the Haitian people. You look at the Black Caucus, they could take a position like, we're not going to vote for your Biden's agenda unless he began to treat the Haitians better. You remember in the 1970s, they sent them to Guantanamo Bay and another little prison in New York where they were growing breasts. They shot them up with estrogen and they were growing breasts. Jesse Jackson went and visited them and talked about it. They called them the boat people. So these are some critical issues that we just bringing up for discussion. But if you have an issue, any of you, the doctor, Mashinda, or Aziza, if you have an issue, or Rashaki, put it on the table tonight. Let's have a discussion. It don't have to be what I'm talking about, but are you paying attention to what's going on? Even if it's about the politics of the progressiveness of Black people, whatever issue you think is critical. Black people in education and the high rate of suspension. All of those things we need to discuss, you know, and try to come up with proposals and try to make more people aware of issues that you think are important for the Black masses and the Black people. And so some of our platform on Conscious Corner, we won't have a guest speaker. We're the guest speaker. And we talk about things that's on your mind and try to get an Afrocentric analysis of current events or historical events that have affected the Black life. So is anybody, Doctor, you have any issues?
No, just what everybody else have. You know, like I said at the beginning, when we first started this platform, you know, and I told you guys, hey, you know, I can't remember what issue was, but it was the same. You know, it's going to happen again. You know, I said it's going to be the next hashtag. We're going to have another hashtag again. We have another incident like this, like you're saying. Again, it's going to keep happening tomorrow, next month, next year, year after that, and year after that. You know, I noticed all these Boyce Watkins and Umars and Tariqs and Browns and Kwame's. Everybody's getting all these talking points and want to talk about this, the issues, and you know, people have been talking about the issues for years, man, and it still continues to happen. So that's the issue. You know, we keep talking about the issues, and the issues keep happening.
What
And
about,
Can I address?
so what's the solution?
Okay.
go ahead.
I mean, we all know the solution. Deep down, we know, you know, the solution, but it's going to continue to happen. You know, we can talk. We'll gain a little, we'll march and gain a little notoriety, and everybody become conscious of something. But again, you know, like I said before, it quiet back down, then we have another issue. It's just a continuing thing about life, man. You know, I think we're not there yet. You know, we're missing something. It's something we're missing. Go ahead, Roski.
Okay, so now we're looking at solutions. Okay, I think the solution starts with you. If you set an example of how people should be, then they can look to you and look to other people like you in order to to see the direction we should be going in. I would like to address a few things when it comes to interacting with the police. I know we've talked about this numerous times, and I kind of mimic what Neely Fuller says, and because of the type of society we live in, which is race based, when he said when the police pull you over, expect to be killed. He said just have that expectation, and then he said don't fight, don't flee, and don't fuss. And we have to have some type of behavior to counter the behavior that's coming towards us. And like the incident, and I guess it was Blake in Minnesota where they shot him in the back, what Professor Rahh was talking about. The police responded to a domestic disturbance. So when you're highly charged and emotional, and your emotions causes you to be irrational, and then you have these police that are in great fear of you anyway. Any little excuse for them to shoot you, they will. So it's a behavior type thing. I looked at Sandra Bland video when she was pulled over by the police, and I saw how calm the police was at first, and then when she raised her energy level and started becoming belligerent, this cop went from one extreme to the next. So he went crazy after she was being a little disruptive. And so I always say this: if she would have reacted different, I think she would have got her ticket and been on her way. So we have to come with a consciousness of what type of society we're living in. We are the targets. You know, that's the white supremacy racism thrives off of our misbehavement. So if we're able to act in a certain way to counter what happens to us on a consistent basis, I think that'll help some of the situation. Just your behavior alone. I know I have a code when I'm being pulled over by the police, and I leave every time. So there's certain things we have to do. We have to cooperate and be able to leave situations versus, being, kind of rough and tough against, the system that's wanting to get us anyway. So that's a few things that I was thinking about as Professor Rahh was talking. We do have to be more solutionary oriented. We have great physicality and mentality, but when we don't act a certain way, it's counterproductive. It kind of aids the system that we're in. Okay, that's I said enough.
Can I just respond to the doctor?
Okay, go ahead.
And appreciate what the doctor says, if I understand correctly. We're taught every day is a good day to struggle. It took over 200 years for us to get out of slavery, but our people struggled every day. To some, it was like it's hopeless. But for those that struggle, especially Haiti, who was the first African people to overthrow their slave masters and start a republic, and had to pay reparations for their revolution to the French because they blockaded the island and forced them into economic oppression. In order to get out of it, they had to sign over $150 million debt to France because they got them out their country. And they said they lost money because Haiti was one of the richest colonies that they had, and all of Europe, with all of its resources, and even today. But let me just go better than that. The Willie and Charlie and Willa Bruce in Manhattan Beach had some property. He paid $1,200 for it back in 23 or something. And they turned it into a Black oasis where Black people went to the beach. They had a club, they had restaurants. It was a luxury place for Black people to come. The white people got mad, took the property for eminent domain, saying they was going to build a park and never did. And so his family for 100 years fought to get the property back. And people kept telling, well, you ain't gonna never get it. They got it back. So it's because we're young, we say, okay, it's just been going on. Look what they did in the George Floyd case. They made it a global movement. They didn't think that we'd ever get voting rights. She walked off the plantation because her slave master told her that they couldn't work no more if they voted. They beat her. They had Black men beat her while she was in jail. She lost her eyes and she couldn't have no kids after the beating. And she didn't blame them. She said, you just forced, they made them. Like they used to make Black people whip those in the Holocaust of enslavement. But this sister started the Mississippi Freedom Party. And she went to the 1968 or 1964 convention and said, we have to question America. She's featured in Eyes of the Prize. And this was her birthday. Many of our children don't even know nothing about Fannie Lou Hamer, which is really about Black womanism and character. But her struggle in Mississippi, it helped Black people get registered to vote, just like Lowndes County, and that's where the Black Panthers got their name. And it was Kwame Ture or Stokely Carmichael and Willie Ricks that started the Black Power movement, registering Black people to vote. They're the ones that started the term Black Power. Look what John Carlos and Tommy Smith did with regards to Olympics. They kicked them out, but they kept counting their medals as part of America. They wanted to deport them when they got back. I mean, our struggle is a continuous struggle, but we can't feel hopeless. That's the point, and helpless. Look at the Afghanistan and the Taliban. No Navy, no Army, no Marines, no Air Force. Fought for 18 years against the powerful army on earth. And they have to leave their country. America's gonna send Haiti back, but they got over 50,000 troops on the continent of Africa. I mean, you know, trying to rebuilding governments, corrupting governments, financing gangs, creating a condition where people are hungry and so they attack each other. I mean, you know, we must look at the things from a holistic standpoint. I'm not saying there's anything we can do other than support organizations that's doing things, but educate ourselves and teach our children the truth about their reality. What Rashiki was saying, yeah, you have to teach your kids how to respond, but sometimes that don't do any good. A lot of Black people are shot in the back. Emmett Till didn't resist. I mean, there are Black people that just say, you know, they said, we're gonna hang somebody tonight. It wasn't about how you talk to them. Oh, please don't kill me, I'll be a good man. No, they still hung them. So I'm just trying to give you a balance that not to be angry, but to be knowledgeable of the reality and the importance of struggle and consciousness, and want to learn these things, not to go out there and get killed yourself, like a couple of young Black people did. They went out and started shooting them from the hotel and trying to attack all white people in Washington, D.C., sniping and all that. I ain't talking about that. We're against any indiscriminate violence. But we are, for the standpoint of educating yourself, being able to protect yourself, and being able to support those that are fighting for change, working for change. Look what Black Lives Matter have done all over the country. These are people that are educators. They're not victims. They are them fighting for victims of abuse. Look at the disproportion of homelessness we have. Look at the disproportion of Black people that have high blood pressure and cancer, diabetes, heart amputees, all of the injustices in the medical field. They want to know what, they don't want to get the shot, but they never talk about the majority of the people in the Army that don't want to get the shot, the majority of police officers that won't take the shot, the majority of fire department people that won't get the vaccine, but they're going to focus on Black people in Mississippi and New Orleans because most of them do their own remedies. Throughout our history, we had to heal ourselves because of discrimination in the hospitals, not just Tuskegee. It's a lot of issues why we don't go to the doctor. It's not just because of Tuskegee or any other form of experimentation. What about the sterilization of Black women? What about the various forms of discrimination with regards to treatment? Most Black people up until the late 60s were born at home with midwives. It's a struggle. The Bruce family is not the only family they took land from. The system took land from. But we have to do that research and bring out the realities in order to promote change and to get people in position of power to fight. John Conyers wrote the reparation bill before he retired. For at least 20 years, he was presented every year. And Martin Luther King's birthday, he wrote that bill. But he never gave up. Just because they wouldn't vote on it, wouldn't even bring it forth to a vote. There are people that, the Garvey movement, we have some beautiful victories all over the world that we have to look at. That's all I'm saying. Anybody have any other comment?
No, I agree. I agree with you saying, Professor. And I'm not saying that give up. I'm just saying, hey, we're going to have those little moral victories here and there. We're going to have more victories tomorrow. We're going to have more victories next year, and on and on. But one thing you said, which what I'm saying is that a struggle is going to continue to happen forever and ever and ever. It's going to happen, because the way the society is. When it goes to law enforcement, you got some idiots out there on the force, man, and no one's holding them accountable. Like you said earlier, with this, they got these all-in rules, all-in laws now. Tariq, she talked about this a couple of years ago. Say, hey, man, we coming up with all these all-in laws. If you witness something and don't do something, you sit there and videotape a fight, they can hold you, they can arrest you for being basically just sitting there watching. And more laws against Blacks. It's going to continue to happen. And like I said, I'm not saying give up the struggle. I'm just saying it's going to happen tomorrow. And we can, you can set up and do all the tables, conferences, ideals, and groups. It's going to continue to happen. And I'm not saying they do that. You do it. We're going to have those moral victories, but it's going to continue to happen, man. it's nothing that we can do right now to stop it. It's just going to continue to happen. It's just kind of like Ross Key said, each individual got to, start thinking for themselves. Like you said, when he goes out, hey, your main objective is want to go home. And, you said when Neely Fuller was saying, hey, expect to be killed by the cops when you go out. You see, like I said, you go back to the early videos. I told you my situational awareness, where I worked at for years. And, when I go out, I be expected to kill by anybody and everybody. So I'm always looking for an out. I'm always looking for the exit. I'm always looking at everybody's movement. I expect it from everybody, man, not just the cops. It's just the way the society we're living in, man. You gotta, like you said, you gotta be educated. You gotta have that situational awareness, and you got what's more important than you. Sit here and argue with the cops, or you want to go home. Hopefully, and like you said, it's gonna be those cases where, hey, everything you do, it won't matter, man, because you're gonna have one of those idiots out there just want to kill you and get the little hashtag and then get the pat on the back that they killed someone, and you're part of a group now. It's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen. The struggle is there, like you said. It's always going to be a struggle. We're living under someone else's rule, so it's always going to be a struggle while we're under this rule here in the United States, America. Man, it's always going to be that way. Till we start running it, man.
And you raise some beautiful points, Doctor, and that's why I like to hear your analysis, because you speak from the heart and you speak from a personal experience, and that's a beautiful thing. Our victory is to understand, how can a people hate you that you never done anything to them as a people? I mean, why do look at what they're doing amongst themselves? I mean, white folks fight each other. The majority of white folks killed in this country was during the Civil War, fighting each other. Even when they fought Germany, that's white folks fighting white folks. Look at the political wars that they got going right now, because America's changing. So they try to come up with limitations on votes to stay in power, white power. And they believe in that. So they're trying to suppress the inevitable, because nature, as Jabal brought out and other speakers have brought out on the platform that Rashaki has provided, nature, the evolution of nature, create change. The climate is changing, not only the physical climate, but the political and cultural. White folks are the minority on the planet. They make about 15% of the world population. That's why they create all these weapons, so that they can rule and take all the resources of the world for themselves. 15% of the people on the planet is white. And they're the minority. Now, they're the majority in this country because they won't let nobody in, and they killed all the Native Americans that was here. But at the same time, look, the same thing that they did to deploy Mexico's resources, deplete them, oppress them, so that they can get cheap labor and cheap prices. Even a governor gave a domestic undocumented woman here, Schwarzenegger, a baby. Boy had to buy a house and give her support. But Feinstein had one working for her. Trump had all his hotels and golf courses, he had undocumented people working. And, as long as they can exploit them, they'll get them in here. But as soon as they come for the purposes of political and cultural change, now all of a sudden they want to limit it because they see their power diminishing because of population change. So they're getting more aggressive. That's why they support Trump. When you talk about make America great again, don't make it white again. How you make it white again? By seeing people of color for sex, entertainment, taxes, and war. But as far as citizenship, as long as they are the people like Larry Elder and Clarence Thomas, yeah. But if you try to say, hey, you for humanity,
Brother Doctor, are you able to hear me?
What's happening?
Yeah, it's that wind is blowing and stuff too. We might have to
Yeah, it may not even be us. It could just be,
the system.
yeah.
Uh, if you look at what's been happening, today is Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day. There's a fight, across America to eradicate Columbus Day. And today John Gruden got fired from the Raiders. He makes racial and homophobic and misogynistic remarks in his emails. They got rid of him. uh, California became the first state to make you take ethnic studies before you graduate in high school. I said those things to say that those are struggles. Those are things to get ethnic studies. After all these years, you have to take ethnic studies to graduate. So basically, as children growing up, again, in our inferior educational system, and again, as educators, we do the best we can. Don't get me wrong. I'm not calling any of us inferior, but the structure of the system, and because I know a lot of us have a lot of great ideas. I'm on the front line every day still in my work in education. So to tie it in, I mean, I'm fighting battles right now in the position that I have in terms of Black students who are being mistreated by white professors. And it's been going on for a while, and they flock to me because it's very few. It's a lot of Black students that go to that school, but they don't hire a lot of Black employees, instructors. And or if they do, they're not vocal like me in terms of again. But it's like being stopped by the police. I'm not going to walk up in the man's office and start cussing him out, but strategically help our people get where they're going, and try to educate them, because a lot of them don't even understand what you're talking about. Back to the ethnic studies being introduced not introduced, but being a requirement to graduate. So maybe in the long term, not, it'll have some effect. That change in itself will educate the minds of others, to where and not only others, but Black people, to understand, some kind of roots, some kind of, to start them off. And then, of course, they will be more, like broadcasts like this, be a willing participant. Because you talk to a lot of people, they're not on this podcast tonight. They're not coming to listen to this. So of course it'll be available for one day when they wake up, and that type of thing. So I kind of just mentioned a few things as I was thinking about Brother Rasaki's perspective writings, about the holidays and why do we chase the devil? You're taught to chase the devil. That's what you're taught. It's being and it is being passed on. Your parents pass it on to you. I remember my mother told me when I was about 14, 15 years old, because my daddy was a revolutionary. My daddy was he wasn't a Black Panther, but he was very affiliated. But he was the director of the Malcolm X Foundation. He was I can go on and on, the different coalitions, even a pallbearer at Martin Luther King's funeral. He was active in civil rights and things. And so I grew up in that kind of household. So I understood at an early age, but the masses of the people don't even understand this conversation, what we're talking about. You got to learn words and jargon before you can understand a sentence. Before you understand a sentence, before you can get to that paragraph, you got to understand the sentence, And in order to understand the page, you got to understand the paragraphs and so forth. And then the chapter, you got to understand the page. to understand the whole chapter. You got to understand the chapters to understand the book. So if you don't understand the basic jargon and understanding of what's going on, or people, so my everyday movement in the struggle is to try to instill some of what I'm talking about right now, and so I just know that you talked about the Haitians and things like that. Sure, I mean, if they overcame the French, don't you think they're pissed off? Sure, they pissed off over years. They don't want to deal with Haitians. They look, and then of course, if the Haitian brothers come over here, they might educate us. They might say, hey, y'all don't know about the struggle, but a lot of them aren't even educated. They are watered down. Some of them are watered down over there as well. But I'm sure that because of its intact Black nation with a lot of issues, because they're locked out of the global financial ball game, I guess that's something I just made up, if you will. And so they're kind of on their own. They're isolated in a lot of ways, So a lot of people don't understand that struggle. But I appreciate you coming on, putting it out there, and that's what this is all about, being a willing participant. I mimic everything you just said, you talked about Jawanza Kunjufu and the conspiracy to kill Black boys and things like that. I think I got a book signed by Kunjufu somewhere. I don't say that, oh, I know Kunjufu, I met him, or back in the day. I'm saying that while people was partying on Friday nights when I was in college, I was at ASCAC conferences. I was over there. I was over there with Dr. Karanga over there, off of Sloss, wherever the think tank is. I went over there a few times, just as an observer, listening and things like that. So I appreciate this discussion, because this is no different than that. You're brainstorming, you're trying to figure out some solutions and things like that. But in our individual lives, we make contributions daily if we want to, and we can't save the world. I mentioned in the earlier broadcast, I'm in survival mode, Yeah, you get stopped by the police. Yeah, if you want to survive, because you got to understand where you at, but at the same time, when I was in a position of working in criminal justice, I know for a fact that matter of fact, I'm my buddy, it's a football game on tonight, the Colts, and my buddy's son is the offensive coordinator for the Colts. So that's a story in itself, but I don't say that because I know, but his daddy, who has the same namesake, is the senior. He was out there in the field working. No, he was actually traveling. He wasn't even doing what I was doing. I was working in the field. He was working in institutions at the time. The police pulled him over, harassed him, this and that. He came home. I was actually living with him. He bought a brand new home. Said, hey man, would you like to rent a room here? Because you was paying. I said, yeah. He was one of my best boys. So I got a room in the home. And so when he came home, him and his wife and me, we sat at the table and he explained what happened. I said, that's totally unacceptable. And so bottom line is we went to the police station and talked to the police chief. And yeah, they gave the cop, 2 weeks on the beach and things like that or whatever. We don't think he ever got fired or anything, but just speaking up to issues, going in and not being scared to speak up when you need to speak up, so but again, you have to have a foundation and an understanding. So I'm happy that there's, starting some efforts of having some kind of ethnic studies. It's a struggle with should we have Christopher Columbus Day? Well, the Italian Americans saying it's Italian pride, so, do they have a point? No, it's a racist monument. These guys built the country on our backs and indigenous people's backs from this country and so forth. And so, that's the same thing as like we're acknowledging the people that was with the Civil War, so somebody has to stand up. You should see these brothers and sisters in New Orleans. I mean, you might have seen it on the news when all those monuments and things, all these racist dudes that were in the Confederacy and all that, they took them all down. They got a black mayor. the black mayor got a lot of heart. She don't care about what those people say. She's like, they coming down, and they didn't, they did it. They tried to do it in a certain, I guess, tactful way, but they're coming down. People say, well, why don't they leave them up? Personally, I was past statues and stuff, because I know where I'm at. This is a big, America's a big statue of itself, so it is what it is. But I get what people are saying. It's just representation. So anyway, I'm just following what you're saying, very aware of what you're saying. And just, anytime that I can contribute, it's an honor. Thank you.
You're on mute, Rahh.
Just saying, Asante Sana, and appreciating what you said, if I understand correctly. And it's just beautiful to know that you have that consciousness and have seeked out knowledge and to be able to, respond appropriately to issues that come up. Aziza, this country is racist, sexist, and capitalist. That's this major characteristic. How do you feel about things?
I agree with you. I wish I had something more intelligent to say, but at the same time, I'm sorry about that. Every time I get on the phone or something. But yeah, as I was saying, I noticed there was a difference, since I was growing up young, and I didn't know no better, and I just thought that that's how things were supposed to be. And it's just sad that things are, still the way that they are, and that our Black children are the main ones that have to suffer. And I just hope I'm able to, convey everything once my son becomes, aware of the world and start understanding things that, I could teach him, things that I wasn't taught until later on, So, but I was just grateful to, you hear you talk about everything that you talked about. I did learn a lot. Some things I will have to research because I hadn't heard of. So I'm grateful that you was able to, help enlighten me and make me aware of some of the things that I didn't know. And great discussion. And I like that everybody's feedback. And that's pretty much all I have to say.
Well, and that's important as a Black woman, because they always say that Black women suffer double in many ways. With regards to the struggle with Black males and the them that are marriage hesitant and commitment hesitant and going to sexual consumption rather than a deep love and appreciation in a monogamous relationship or in a serious committed relationship. But many of us are not raised that way. I wasn't raised that way. I was raised to get all the loving I could find and buy and steal and do whatever I could do. Until you study your history and see how you have hurt women and hurt children that grow up without fathers being there, and hurt the race as a whole by realizing that we created the concept of mating and longevity in relationships way before the European. While he was hitting women in the head, dragging them in the caves, we were having matriarchal systems and having procreations and ceremonies for togetherness and diaries for when you wanted somebody's daughter or husband. And I mean, it was just all kinds of relationships we had. Women started polygamy on the continent of Africa for various reasons, for survival and development. I mean, we have a rich history. We had women that were queens way before all these women in Europe and in America got the right to vote. We had Hatshepsut, we had Queen Makeda and Goddess, and I mean, we have a rich history of women having power in Zinca, and all of them. Some women were warriors, and they are the ones that were the first heads of families from a matriarchal standpoint. And you still find these communities on the continent of Africa where women actually are the rulers of the village and things of this nature. So it's a beautiful thing when you have strong women, not because they have to endure so much hardship, but they're just strong by the nature of their being and deal with whatever come their way. And you raising your children, and you have to let them know this is a very challenging society, because freedom comes responsibility, and responsibility is not just to teach our people to beware of whites, but we have to teach them to beware of all people, because evil comes in all shades, mistreatment comes in all shades for various reasons. Oppression make people mistreat each other. Lack of cultural consciousness, the theologizing of each other, men seeing you as a goddess, and you seeing men as gods from the standpoint of respect and being truthful and honest. These are things we have to raise our children to be, not like James Bond, not like Shaft, not like Superfly, but to be strong African men. And it's just like the Muslims teach their people don't eat pork. Well, we can teach our people don't mistreat each other. It's a learned behavior to mistreat each other, from shooting dice to lagging pennies, to hustling each other. All of that, things we learn on the corners, in the barber shops, and in the shoe shine parlors, and hustling each other for a nickel, a dime, a couple of dollars, selling each other drugs. Those are learned behaviors and situations that it don't have to be that way. You see, and so I'm sure you're going to raise your children to be ethical, educated, orientated, like those of us. I grew up. I had to retire from gang violence, but my kids never were in a gang. I made sure of that. You understand? Because I chose a friend. You couldn't have a friend. You're too young. You just got here. No peer pressure. If anybody bother you, let me know. Don't you try to handle it. So my kids went through school without a fight. You understand? But me, I was fighting it. I was spending it all the time. You understand? That's just where Compton was. That was my rep. My rep wasn't basketball. My rep was thumping. You understand? And so I understand that life. Hustling, dealing. Hey, the nightclubs, from the apartment to all the clubs on Crenshaw, up and down Slauson, after hour joints. You have to come out of that if you live, if you don't be in the penitentiary. You understand? But go ahead, Rashiki, what's your position on things?
Well, what in particular?
Anything.
I was talking about capitalism with a few people, and the capitalistic system breeds greed, unequal treatment. Especially when you have a power structure that's race based. If you in capitalism, if you have, it's taught to always to get more, to make more off of what you have, and it kind of messes with the psyche, I think, of fairness and unjust, you know, because you always competing to get more and more and more. And where does it end? You know, and is the results the way they should be? You know, like we have a small portion of people in the world that's richer than over half of the world. You know, it just, I mean, we're in a messed up situation, and it has to change. And the only way it's going to change is, like you said, through struggle and standing up to what we're faced with. And being educated is a excellent thing, because you'll be able to make decisions that's going to create transformation and change and revolution.
But capitalism is fueled by greed and envy. If your neighbor get a new car, you get a new car. If your neighbor get a swimming pool, you get a bigger swimming pool. Envy and greed drives, but you don't have to be envy and greedy. That's a learned behavior. We practice African socialism. We value money, I mean, in the medium of exchange, but you have to have a consciousness of how to handle money and don't let it rule you. Could you imagine going to prison for robbing a 7-Eleven? Would you get a Slurpee? What? I mean, here you are going to do 10 years for $2,000. That's like slavery. Somebody, you do 10 years of your time, and all you get was $2,000 for it. Yeah, that don't make sense. But people want money, and I'm not talking about poor people. There are people that have stuff that want more money. Want more, don't share. You teach your kids to be able to take care of themselves and provide for their family in a capitalistic society. But at the same time, you teach them to earn and to hopefully get an education, whereas they can get a job that pays enough, whereas they don't become so embedded in debt. Many of us with consciousness paid for our kids' college because we knew that if they got out of college with a bunch of loans, they'd be in debt for the rest of their life. So we hustled up the money, sacrificed, drove cheap cars to make sure your kids get an education and didn't have a bunch of debt. What do? They go to grad school and get a bunch of debt. You understand? Instead of work and then pay their way slowly. But what can you say? You're happy that they got an education, and you're happy that they can buy a house, or that they got a decent car, and they're being decent as much as they can. They're all professionals. They're not living off of you or in your house to a certain degree. But that's what capitalism teach you, rather than families coming together and living in the same house. You got some grandparents with 4 and 5 bedroom houses, all their kids gone.
It's just vision, man. It's just, you got the vision, and like you said, you know, situation where everybody has a quality trade, and you know, you can go and doing business and make it. But this is one question I want to ask.
Yes.
You, Professor, I need your opinion or something. I'm trying to put them together. Civil rights movement, the George Floyd movement. Now, when the George Floyd movement was happening, like you said, we saw this all over the world. People marching. I mean, you made corporations starting to bow down. You had the NFL, the NBA, everybody bowing down and coming up with stuff, working on solutions. Just as the civil rights movement that was strong, got some changes. Why all of a sudden it just fades out? Why not? Why didn't that George movement still happen today? Millions of people marching in the street still to the day. I mean, just bashing them, man. Why does this just fades out? If, in your opinion, why does that happen? In your opinion, if they would have still been going strong today, what do you think we would have been looking at now as society?
Well, let me just say that. Appreciate what you asked, if I understand correctly. It is still going on. A Black Lives Matter movement is still going on.
But not the strongest, like with everybody in the streets marching, millions of people over the world. I mean, that movement was going on for months. And like the civil rights movement with all the boycotting, why you just don't run it into the ground and just make them beg for mercy?
Well,
don't stop. Keep it strong.
Yeah, you're right. Disruption of the system is something, but you got to remember, you had Trump, you had pandemic, you had a lot of issues that came up to divert the media from the actions of people. There are people still demonstrating. There are people still going to, but they do it in small groups. A lot of us think that because the media is not focusing on the movement, because that's part of their strategy, not to let you know, make you think there ain't nothing happening. But there are many groups that are still marching, still demonstrating, and still you got the reparations movement, you got the criminal justice movement to help people who just get out of prison. You got the just so many different movements. The HIV movement. You got the Black HIV movement. We're fractured into interest groups. And so when we was in the civil rights movement, it was just one big movement about civil rights. And those were voting, housing, education, and economics. But now you got Black people split out in so many different issues that is very difficult for them to come together. We need an overarching movement. We need a centralized movement, a national Black United Front, but you need finances for that. We have a lot of, look what Black people did in Atlanta, in Georgia, to get that Jewish boy and that Black man in the Senate. Look how Black people voted in the 2018 election to change the Congress from Republican to Democrat. Look how they came together, and 80 million people, and 90% of them were Black, that got Trump out of office. So the struggle has just changed its formation from demonstration to action. Everybody don't do it. I mean, but there's a lot of things going on that that we don't see, from the reparations movement to the criminal justice system. Look at getting Black people out of prison, getting rid of, okay, let me give you an example. California State Senator Stephen Bradford wrote a law about decertifying bad police. And it got signed in the law in California. Shirley Weber, and what Mashinda was saying about requirement for ethnic studies on the Cal State system and non-public schools, but the majority of states are saying they don't want it. They're dealing with critical race theory. They don't want to know about slavery. They don't want to know about racism and hanging and lynching and the savagery of the Native American and the mistreatment of the Japanese and internment. They don't want to hear that. So they are going in and telling people, take this out the school books. And they firing teachers that teach it right now. Why? Because of the movement. So you have states, big metropolitan areas, New York and all of that, saying we're going to teach ethnic studies. And you got small studies in small towns that say we don't want it. The majority of colleges are small, all-white college, religious college, evangelical colleges, Catholic colleges, in small little hick towns. And that's who Trump then went and got to come out the mountains and the caves to vote. You see? And so you think they're gonna let you make movements and they don't respond? Why they assassinated many of our leaders? Because of the movement. So I agree with you wholeheartedly from the standpoint of, the civil rights, it's hard to see it, but like, that's why I brought up the Bruce struggle. Willa Charles and Willa Bruce. I mean, 100 years of struggle. But that wasn't just a struggle for them, that was a victory for us as Black people. Because it inspires other Black people to sue and to fight and to continue the struggle. Because you have victories. But it's hard to see them. It's hard to see them. Unless this is why on this forum, we talk positiveness. We don't demonize Black people. We don't say Black on Black crime. We don't say why Black people ain't doing stuff. We talk about what they doing, how they doing it. What Rashaki is doing with this platform. It's small right now, but it's gonna grow. It's gonna grow. As a matter of fact, a lot of people watch it on YouTube. But it's a struggle. I mean, our people are just, that's what we got to deal with. We got to deal with it. I mean, it's hard when they're gonna have Snoop and Lil Wayne say that they got the record of the year, cussing us out. You had Snoop on top of VIP records in Long Beach doing the Crip Walk. On his first record, and we try to teach our kids don't do that, and they making them millionaires. Making them, hey, they gonna sing at the Super Bowl. You understand? We didn't choose them to sing at the Super Bowl. The white man did. We didn't play their records. The white man did. You understand? So, we got it. But what if Snoop them change on them? You understand? He's coaching little kids in football. He's sponsoring little programs here and there. Look what they did to Coleman. One knee. Now he had the whole NBA and everybody on football teams down on one knee after George Floyd. They felt liberated. You understand? It's a beautiful thing if you see the positiveness. But if you only see white folks killing us, you understand? You got to remember they can die too. Fight, We used to go hunt them. We hunt white folks and beat them up. You understand? They come across the track. If we went across the tracks, they chased us. They came across the track. We said, "Oh, here's some fresh white meat." That's where the game goes. Right there on Watts Avenue in Alameda. The Densons and Nelsons. We were family. But that's the way the struggle. We used to hop freights. I mean, those are the things that you grow up with, man. And it's a beautiful thing to come out of it alive, because so many of your friends died or went to prison or just on the corner talking to themselves. And you just say, thank the Creator or the spirituality of your ancestors or your parents, or just grateful for being lucky not to be one of them. Yeah, it's a blessing. you know, in many ways. All right, Rashiki, about time for us to close it out.
Okay. Well, we have brother CJH Moore again, part 3. I'll be discussing his book again. Natural Born Gangster, The Legend of Chris Bell, part 3.
Okay.
And then we're gonna have a final part. So we have 2 more parts to go with that. And that should be interesting on Wednesday.
Okay.
Looking forward to it. Then we got Conscious Corner back on Monday again.
Okay. You know, it was windy out there, and y'all feel the wind?
Yes, we've been having some issues over here with the internet being unstable. I think that has something to do with it.
All right, then. Each
Okay.
one teach one.
All right, Conscious Corner.
All
Good
right.
evening, everybody.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.